afternoon from all to the CWN newsroom. Today on the CWN, we will have a special appearance from Clara Barton and our reports about the reasons our war started, Fort Sumter, and what our soldiers do during their time. Surrender at Appomattox and uniforms of the Union and Confederate. To you, Caleb.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Yes, the war has begun. Let's recap the three main reasons. First, the economy and social differences between the North and the South become to a head. With the South using their cotton gin, which has encouraged slavery, has enraged the North. On the flip side, the South is angry at the North for using factories rather than slaves. Second, some states feel their rights have been disrespected by the federal government, which has moved them toward secession. The third and final main reason is the election of Abraham Lincoln, who was in favor of the northern states' interests. Stay tuned to CWN for further reports on the progression of the war over the
Thank you, Caleb. Today we are honored to interview Clara Barton. Clara, welcome to CWN. We just finished reporting about the causes of the war. Tell us, what's your involvement?
Well, I wanted to help with the casualties of war, so in 1862, I was granted permission to deliver medical supplies to the front lines.
I'm sure those supplies were greatly needed. Now, is it true that you went on to become a nurse?
Yes, in fact, in 1864, I became the superintendent of Union nurses.
Wow, that's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you, Cheyenne. But that's only the beginning of...
Claire, could you give us a brief overview?
Sure. It's my vision to establish an organization that will help to provide assistance to those in need. I'm thinking of calling it the Red Cross.
Thank you, Clara, and we wish you the best of luck.
This is Fort Sumter.
Let's go back in time and look at the beginning of the war. The first battle being at Fort Sumter. The Battle of Fort Sumter was reported as being a day and 3 hours, but the mysterious thing was that there were never any casualties. As we all know, that was between Union and Confederate, but on April 13th, the Confederates surrendered, knowing the Union to a victory. Fort Sumter was no ordinary battle, but it was the first beginning of the Civil War.
During the war, we all wonder about what the soldiers are doing, and what their living conditions are. When soldiers are not fighting, they usually have training and drilling battle techniques. Drum and bugle corps practice too. When soldiers had spare time, they would write letters and play games such as dominoes, cards, chess, dice, and many others. Living conditions were hard for soldiers. 3 homes were tents called dog tents, and drums were played for different types of the day. Their clothes were wool uniforms and belt with tools and boots. Soldiers live in the war through rough, but our heroes feel fit to fight. To you, Caleb.
Thanks, Cheyenne. After a series of letters between Lee and Grant, Confederate and Union generals, Lee decided to surrender on April 9th. On April 3rd, Richmond fell to the Union. This was the final Confederation. Appomattox ended the war. Appomattox was the final resting place of the war. The uniforms between the Confederate and Union were so similar that almost the color difference them. At the beginning of the war, Union and Confederate wore uniforms of their native countries. Also, as the war went on, both Union and Confederate ended up wearing standard uniform designs. The Union's infantry officers and enlisted men wore dark blue frock coats, and all others wore single-breasted coats. The Confederate uniforms were gray. Volunteers, though, wore dark blue on accident and were mistaken on the battlefield. They all wore single-breasted coats. Confederate and Union used bottoms to determine rank. Conclusion. Uniforms of the Union and Confederate were very similar, but different in every way. Thank you for watching CWN, and good night.
Why? Sure.
I don't...
Oh!